Witton Priory. It's a still grey day here, and Whithorn as a place is quite, at the moment when we came here, there seemed to be hardly anybody about, and yet it's been a really bustling place for many, many years, and it's where the earliest foundation of Christianity was in Scotland. St Ninian came to convert the southern Picts half a century before St Columba in Iona, and his stone church was called Candida Casa, the White House, and this is where Whithorn got its name from. So at the time it was built as a stone building, and a white stone building, I suppose it was painted white. It would have really stood out because the majority of people would have lived in wooden buildings. Whithorn, and this wild and windswept setting is where there's the chapel, St Ninian's Chapel, which they think was built about the early 1200s for all the many pilgrims that came here via the sea. And also there was a port here where they had provisions and trade, and it must have been a welcome haven for seafaring pilgrims. And the chapel was probably used to give thanks for their safe arrival. The St Ninian Chapel was on the site of an earlier chapel for the pilgrims landing here. It is remarkable to think of how many pilgrims over the hundreds of years have come here from all over the place, because St Ninian and their faith was so important to them. So they really did make an effort to come. And it's quite, as I said, remarkable to think of it standing here in this little chapel now, buffeted by the wind, as I should think it always is, and nobody else here except us. From more recent times, there's the Solway Harvester Seat, which is a simple granite-hewn memorial to the 7 local men who lost their lives when their boat, the Solway Harvester, sank in a storm off the Isle of Man in January 2000. And so now, today, the Isle of Whithorn is home to around 300 people, and the harbour remains in use with regular landings from the Irish Sea Shell fishing boats. And the local fleet bring in lobster, which is served up at the steam packet inn. So we've parked the car now, and the only way to get to St Ninian's Cave is by foot for a mile, and it said on the notice stout footwear recommended, so we got our walking boots on, and indeed it is quite muddy. Just past a field with the most enormous bull in it, and I didn't feel that the barbed wire fence was going to be adequate protection, but luckily he didn't seem interested in us. So we've just come out of the woods with great tall narrow trunked trees and lots of bracken and ferns. We could smell the sea, and we could feel the wind, and the sun is shining on the sea, so it's lovely. So St Ninian's cave may also have been a calling point for pilgrims arriving by sea. And the cave is around 7 metres deep and 3 metres high, and it's traditionally believed to have been used by St Ninian as a devotional retreat, as these Celtic saints did like to have their time apart. Crosses carved into the walls date from the 700s onwards, and among them was discovered an early Christian symbol, the Cairo cross. Stones were discovered here in the 1880s and 1950, and now they're in the museum in Whithorn. But this cave is smaller than it was in the medieval period due to several collapses of the overhanging roof. And in fact they still do have pilgrimages to the cave even now.